Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of I Drink and I Stack Things, the show that's been on break for far too long and needs to get back to work. I know it's been a while, and for that I apologize. I'm going to try to keep a tighter filming schedule going forward, especially since I have a few ideas that are based around today's topic, which, since you looked at the thumbnail, you should know what I'm on about today: Goldbacks, Drawbacks. Now, since this is the 7th episode, I am having myself a glass of 7 and 7. It's like the 70s never went away. Once again, just a reminder, this video is not sponsored. Today we're diving into something shiny, intriguing, and of course controversial: Goldbacks. You know what they are if you've followed my channel before, but if not, these gold-infused notes are marketed as a currency that you can use in places like Utah, Nevada, and beyond. But what happens if they become too popular? That is part of the subject of today's show. What happens if, say, some event happens overnight, like Donald Trump endorses Goldbacks, or they appear in a popular TV show and everyone starts talking about them and wanting to know where to get them? Suddenly, demand absolutely skyrockets. They blow up on social media. Suddenly, everyone wants one. And that sounds great, right? Especially if you got a big stack of them already. Because it certainly is if you collect. But if your end goal as a company, such as Goldback is for them to be spent, when something gets super popular, people don't just use it, they collect it. Think about rare coins like this Morgan dollar here. It has a face value of $1, but you would be very foolish to take 5 of these and buy a cup of coffee with it, since they are worth quite a bit more as a collector's item. Even if there were no precious metals in them, the rarity alone would cause people to collect and even hoard them. When people start hoarding them for their novelty or their investment potential, they stop circulating as money. Goldbacks are already sold at a premium, sometimes 2 to 3 times their gold value, but if they go viral, collectors and investors could drive that premium even higher. You'll start seeing things like this 5 Florida Goldback, if it were suddenly not being made anymore. I mean, it's currently showing at like $33. I mean, it could suddenly go up to 50 or even 60 on eBay if the supply runs short. I don't really know how many Goldbacks can be produced or how many of those machines at Valorum are cranking out the Goldbacks, but there has to be a certain upper limit to it. And so if demand were to skyrocket, they would become collector's items and people would really not want to spend them. They'd end up in a display case rather than being exchanged for a burger. Now, there is a second corollary to this, if you will, a second drawback that I want to talk about that is related to supply and demand, is that it has recently been announced that Goldbacks such as this one, I believe it's, what are the 3 states? Nevada, Utah, and New Hampshire, has been announced that they will be discontinued. Basically, they're not going to make this design anymore. So this automatically becomes a collector's item, even though it was one of many in this bundle. These were the first Goldbacks ever made, starting back in 2019. Why does this matter? Because when something gets discontinued, it becomes a magnet for collectors. Think about things like Beanie Babies, Pokemon cards, or even old silver dollars. Once they're no longer in production, people start snapping them up, not to spend, but to keep. And the problem is there are so many of this particular series in circulation that it represents almost everything out there that someone would actually use for trade. And they have just suddenly overnight become collector's items. So people are going to start snapping them up, not to spend, but to keep. But the thing is, Goldbacks are supposed to be interchangeable. 5 of these gets you 1 of these. 2 of these gets you 1 of these. It's supposed to be completely fungible in that sense. But if some of them become collector's items, that's going to happen less and less. So in theory, you can still spend an old Utah Goldback in a store that accepts them. But in practice, if collectors start paying a premium for those discontinued Utah, Nevada, or New Hampshire Goldbacks on eBay or coin shops, people will hesitate to spend them. Why use a 2024 Utah Goldback at a coffee shop if you could just sell it to a collector for $50 or more? The collector craze could pull these older series out of circulation, making it harder for Goldbacks to function as a practical currency, at least for those specific notes. And it's not just about the old series. If newer series like Florida or South Dakota keep getting issued while older ones keep getting phased out, the whole system starts feeling less like a currency and more like a collectible trading card game. That premium I talked about earlier, it's already a hurdle to some people. I mean, they go on and on about the bloody premium. But if it's only double right now, it's going to go up quadruple if collector demand spikes. And those premiums can make Goldbacks even less affordable for everyday transactions. So what's the big picture here? Goldbacks are a fascinating idea, a currency backed by gold, usable at thousands of businesses, a hedge against inflation, but their biggest strengths could also be their Achilles heel if they're not managed properly. If they get too popular, or if certain series become collector's items, especially if that series is very popular and the one where there's been the largest amount of circulation, they risk becoming more like shiny keepsakes than actual money. Don't get me wrong, I love the concept, I'm rooting for Goldbacks to succeed, but for them to work as a currency, they need to stay in wallets, not in display cases. But at the same time, I also recognize that Goldbacks have to grow and evolve, just as fiat has. A $100 bill from 30 years ago has only a passing resemblance to the modern version with all of its new security features, and staying ahead of the curve is a good idea. I just worry that if certain denominations are taken out of circulation before they're replaced by their more modern version, it could create a collecting frenzy which will all but stop people from using Goldbacks for trade. I think it would have been better to step up production of the newer Goldbacks, get them in circulation, get them into people's hands for spending before the old designs are discontinued. The year alone will be enough for some collectors, but not so many that people would be afraid to, say, buy a cup of coffee with a Goldback that has a 2023 date on it. And I certainly don't mean for this video to be all doom and gloom. I am still a Goldbacker, and likely will be for a long time unless they make some really major mistakes. With new states joining the program and more businesses signing on, interest in Goldback should continue to expand, but they'll need to manage supply and keep premiums in check in order to avoid these collector-driven pitfalls. Otherwise, Goldbacks might end up as the next big thing on a collector's shelf. And that's not what we want if we want this to be something that people can use to spend. I don't have all the answers, but I do see this as one of the drawbacks of Goldbacks if it's not managed carefully. That's it for today's video. Be sure to like, subscribe if you haven't already. You can click the bell if you want to. I will try to do more deep dives on Goldbacks, especially as we go forward. Although with all the changes in silver, my next video is definitely going to be along those lines. But until then, thank you for watching.